Grandest day, brother. Waiting on somebody to get in here. Just sitting for a minute, relaxing. Before we get into it, so since you hear me, you about to get into it, bro. What's goody this morning? How you doing? All right, let's see. We're gonna get into part two of Doctrine of Discovery, the Indian Act. Okay, so let's see here. The Indian Act of 1876. We're going to get into part two of this, go into the information. Um, this is from the Truth and Conciliation Commission of Canada. I have put the link in the chat if you guys want to go back, if you didn't get a chance to see part one and go over the first important, very vital information of the Doctrine of Discovery. Make sure you go back and do that, okay? Now, Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This happened in 2015. In 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada issued 94 calls to action regarding reconciliation between Canada and the Indigenous people, called number 45 and 48, address the effects of the doctrine of discovery and its legacy of supremacy and subjugation of Indigenous people in Canada. 48, number 48, calls upon the churches of Canada to adopt and comply. Called upon the churches of Canada to adopt and comply with the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. We've read that before. We can go back into that after we complete this. The UNDRIP establishes, among other things, a right of Indigenous people to their lands and a right not to have their lands taken from them without free will. And with Indigenous people, we will say that includes the Aboriginal, of course. So, going back before the Indigenous people of the land, Indigenous is a little different. To their lands and the right not to have their lands taken from them without their free, prior, and informed consent. And Indigenous people also have a right to self-government, which will include Aboriginals. We have I played our anthem, which is now my new anthem, numerous times, guys. So you guys know when it comes to that, what's going on. Peace, brother. Peace. What's going on, Lemoyne? Hope you doing good, bro. Peace, peace, peace. America's true and DNA. Grandest to you, bro. All right, and let's go on. Number 45 explicitly called on the governments of Canada and America. As you guys know, we have performed or set forth a declaration to the United States government, and that would include this. On behalf of all Canadians, to repudiate the Discovery Doctrine and implement the UNDRIP. Does the Doctrine of Discovery and its legacy still matter today? Why and what and how? It's kind of hard to see if it's relevant today, correct? We haven't been able to see it being put in forth, and it's been 7 years now. So in those 7 years, we have to wonder: are any of these policies actually being put forth? Let's see. No, thank you. I don't want to do that right now. Indigenous and Northern Affairs in Canada transformation. Indigenous and Northern Affairs in Canada was dissolved and replaced by two departments. One was the Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs in Canada, and one was the Indigenous Services in Canada. So they have, as you see, there's like two different things. You find out about the Indigenous people and the communities, the treaties, the agreements of Northern Affairs, and the new Arctic and the Northern Policy Framework, recognition of the Indigenous rights and self-determination discussions, new permanent bilateral, such. Okay, so this is kind of what's going on. Right now they dissolved it into two different areas so that they can actually handle things better, is my way of thinking. So let's get into reading a bit of this Christian domination and go from there. Okay. Let me find the right document here, guys. I believe this is it. Let me see. Double check. Let me double check. Okay. Okay. think I found it. Let's see. Let's see. Yep, Christian domination and the failure of truth. Da 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 da. The failure of truth, lies, indoctrination, all that stuff. Okay, we're going to get into that. Christian domination, the failure of truth, and reconciliation. Right. So this description we're going to get into, kind of read the document that goes over that. The description is, this conference continues discussion between the religious communities and the indigenous people about the doctrine of the Christian discovery. There's the doctrine of discovery and there's the doctrine of Christian discovery. So that, which you guys know is, pretty much the same thing. Just like they dissolved, as we just read Kent, you see they went from, with the particular doctrine they had, they went from one and they kind of divided into two. One is the visit Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs, and one was the visit Indigenous Services of Canada. And here we have the doctrine of discovery that's followed, and also the doctrine of Christian discovery. So it's been separated as well. So that real healing can occur. This is what they say. Truth and reconciliation. Let's see how this healing is going to affect us, because we haven't seen any effects yet. We are standing for it now in 2022 and not, letting any of these things dissolve us as a people, because we are coming into self, we're coming to realization, we're coming into the facts of matter, and the realization actually reveals truth so that we're able to stand on it. We're able to go into our correct and proper standing in our value as a people, correct? Okay. Efforts in truth and reconciliation. So efforts in settler colonial states have the appearance of resolving the history of conquest and domination, but often do not result in the healing of indigenous people and their lands, as we know. Using words like reconciliation, repudiation, domination, discovery, conquest, missionization, colonism, and settler colonialism, or referring to the indigenous people in the singular or as populations, issues or groups. They have consequences. Noam Chomsky, George Lakoff, and Stephen Newcomb remind us that word choice matters. Spellbinding. We talk about this all the time. And although these concepts appear benign, just like someone wants to continue to tell us, oh, you're black, there's white supremacy, so on and so forth, these things are definitely not true. There's no white supremacy over us. How could someone be supreme over us when they don't even have this proper standing that we have? When standing your true self, then no one can stand supreme over you, because you are a supreme being. You are not black in the law, because black in the law means you are a dead person. You are walking. You're not the walking dead. You're not a zombie. So, in fact, you are a true living being. BEING. A being, right? A person that matters. They actually perpetuate and give cover to a violent past. The DOCD continues to be a matter of urgent concern for the indigenous people around the world and the Aboriginal people around the world. It has emboldened transnational corporations to further their extraction practices everywhere, forcing standoffs and migration of indigenous people. As you see, that's going on right now. It's going on in Russia right now. The indigenous people over there have been forced to Poland. There's like 1.5 million people that are forced to Poland, so on and so forth, and clearing out some of the people over there, because they have been, a lot of them, in partaking in human trafficking. The underlying story of some of the things that are going on with this war right now, whether people know it or not. So another story I don't even want to get into, because people, think that the wars are actually about certain things. It's the thievery of funding from people to be able to have people destitute, looking for ways to feed themselves, closing down stores. I mean, there's like a whole list of things. I don't like getting to those negative type of builds, but maybe I need to do one so you guys can really see what's going on. Okay, our lineup of speakers will address the international migration issues and the connection between the DOCD and the destruction of Mother Earth. There are different conferences that have been held at this time. I didn't get to go to any of them, obviously, or I would talk about them, but These are the things that they were doing. So the discovery, the doctrine of discovery, and these information with the Christian and pulling or tying into everything that they have done. Oh my gosh, I have something else. I got another link to find. I wish I could have everything on one link, because especially when it's sharing good like this, I'm like, whoa, what's going on? I got it all. Okay. We're going to get into the historical context before the Indian Act of 1763 and 1876. And, I'm wondering if I want to, hold on, see. I think I'm not going to get into that. We know that a lot of the information is kind of similar when it comes to Canada, but I think we are going to get into another part of the one. Just a moment. We'll get into that from the Federal Indian Relations of 1774 to 1788. These things we get into possibly. I believe we read up to these pages actually. And, to get back to the- Okay, yeah, we can do this. Okay, the imperial control collapse. That's what we're going to get into rather quickly here. This won't be a very long video, guys. I have another video planned for you guys later. I don't want to do too much today and get a little aggravated. I got a lot going on, but I want to make sure I didn't forget about you guys. I try to be consistent and getting our information out, making sure you guys aren't slacking or lacking in anything. Okay, so if I'm doing that, I feel a little more sufficient in handling things and being able to take care of things that I'm trying to. So it's not to get overwhelmed. I'll just do that. All right, let's get it. The collapse of the imperial control. The importance of the Indian problem. Now we're speaking about the things that are going on over here. We just talked about um, certain areas. Keeping in mind, a lot of times when we hear these things, I keep telling people the Indians are everywhere. This ignorant dude, the PMF guy, did a video saying that something about the Louisiana people, they're not American. I can't even remember the idiocy of the video, but somebody actually sent it to me because it was so absurd. Like, look at this dude. Like, he was, oh, Aboriginal community is a gay community because they're doing this and that. I mean, just all this weird stuff. I'm like, this dude really beats the lawsuit. I think I mentioned this to you guys yesterday, but it's just bugging me more and more. I actually made a comment on his video, and the girl Kiera, who I thought was a little intelligent, she responded with something, about being dumb, or I can't remember what it was. I'm just like, honey, I ain't nowhere am I dumb. So I've just laughed at the comment and kept it moving. But when you think about the things that they think when they want to prove or land themselves as a part of this nation, the more community, I'm not sure if they're very tied to the nation in certain ways. I just know what I've studied as far as them coming over, being traitors to the land, helping go against our people, so on and so forth. Other than that, once I learned that, I could care less. I'm not really interested no more. So anything that they have to say or do doesn't really affect me. And I just wonder why he goes so hard against the Aboriginal community when they don't even mention him. He's not even showing anything or proving anything as far as what he says. Yes, his information is good when he's showing some historical stuff, but the things he tie into it when he reads it, it's like absurd. It's like, sweetheart, you have to be a little more intelligent than that. I'm like so lost. But we have to just stay focused on what's going on, so these people aren't distracting us from the truth of things because they want to have a placement or have themselves implanted some way, partaking in what's going on with us. So let's get to it. The collapse of the imperial control. The importance of the Indian problem. The tribe with whom the government dealt. The establishment of imperial control of matter of necessity. The proclamation of 1763. A temporary expedient. The excellent The excellent but expensive plan of 1764 established an Indian boundary, which was to be maintained by the individual colonies. The imperial land policy not always consistent. The Indian Department tries to prevent illegal land purchases in the South, encroachments on tribal lands in the North, Lord Drummore's War, a speculator's war. The Indian Department meets with difficulties in trying to enforce trade regulations in the South. The attempt to establish a unified trade policy in the North does not succeed. The Quebec Act of attempt to place northern Indian trade under governmental control. The collapse of British control of Indian affairs in the South. The end of imperial rule in the North. The New York colony proposed a policy of unified control of Indian affairs. They proposed a policy and took over Indian affairs. The Pennsylvania-Virginia boundary dispute. The Virginia takes dispute. Virginia takes steps to protect the western frontier. Establishment of the Continental Indian Department's preliminary negotiations with the tribes began. The Indians as a factor in the Revolutionary War. The problem of Indian participation in the war, why the Americans failed to secure the Indians as allies, congressional machinery for managing Indian affairs, treaties with the Six Nations, British able to maintain many agents among the tribes. We read that in which one of those? Actually, I want to make sure I'm telling you guys the right one because I think I provided the link for this book. We read that in, the law. I think it was the Indian, I don't see it pulled up. I think I put it down after that last line. But we read about that in the book, and it told us, why, they traded with each other, why they were going against each other, what was going on. They were forced to group up with the French because the other tribes had the Indian, not the French, they had the, which tribe was it? I think it was the Choctaws had the English, and they had the French to help them because they were overwhelmed because the Choctaws had all these other people to assist them, so they had to group up because they would have been taken over, which eventually still happened. The problem of the Indian participation in the war, why they failed to secure the Indians as allies, congressional machinery for managing the Indian affairs, treaties with the Six Nations, British able to maintain many agents among the tribes, activities on New York frontier 1775, the Fort Pitt frontier 1776 to 77. Congress takes charge of the Fort Pitt frontier in 1777. The British Indian Department of the South. Rivalry of the British agents in the North. They say British, but we know these were not British. They were, I believe, they were like English, like from the London English, mixed Spanish tribe or something. Rivalry of the British and Americans for the support of the Six Nations. The Burgoyne expedition, the St. Leger expedition, the Fort Pitt frontier of 1777 through 79, the Clark expedition, and episode of the struggle for possession of Western land. Controversy of Virginia with the land companies. So there were land companies, obviously, in the early 1700s. You know how they say there wasn't anything going on. We know that's a lie. The Sullivan expedition, the New York frontier of 1780, the British attack on St. Louis, the New York frontier of 1781, the Fort Pitt frontier of 1781, and the Indians as auxiliaries during the war. So this chapter is entitled with like the controversy of Virginia with the land companies, the Sullivan expedition, the New York frontier, the British attack, blah 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 blah. Check on the chat. Yes, a couple of my people in there. What's going on? Sis Grandis, Grandis. What's up, bro? What's up? Peace, bro. I haven't seen you in a minute. Yes. Grandis, guys. The Indians not mentioned in the peace treaty in 1783 were the failure of the Douglas mission. General Schuyler's preliminary negotiations with the Six Nations. General Schuyler and the Washington advised Congress with regard to Indian affairs. The Congress proposed to secure the revenue from the Western lands, the land ordinances of 1785, the ordinances of 1786 for regulating the Indian affairs, the Treaty of Fort Stanwix, the clash with the state of New York, The Fort McIntosh Treaty, not acceptable to the Indians. Captain Dowdy points out that the weakness of the federal Indian policy. And at the time, the treaty at Fort Finney, the Indians not willing to accept its provision. Obviously, they were going against that. Why would they want to accept this crap that they're trying to put on them? The federal government tries to prevent intrusion on the Indian land. The British policy of watchful waiting, the Western Indians' attempt to unify policy, the federal government prepared for a policy of frontier defense, the Northwest Ordinances, the establishment of the new government in the Northwest Territory, final confederation treaties with the Northern and the Western Indians. The Indian problem in the North and the West is left unsettled. Duh. Like it was going to be that easy, but it shall be. The problems of peace negotiations with Southern Indians. The report of Committee on the Indian Affairs in the South. Proposals of the Southern Confederacy to deal with Indians. State negotiations with the tribes. Conditions in the South hasten the federal action. The federal commission failed to secure a treaty with the Creek Indians. The Spanish influence on Southern Indian affairs. Georgia opposes the federal policy. Now, check this out. Oh my gosh, now I remember what this stupid guy was saying about Georgia. I don't remember exactly. The guy PMF. I'm sorry, guys, to go back, but I got to say this. He said that no Indians and no Americans or something were in Georgia. There were no Aboriginals in Georgia. They were all in the swamps. They were living in the swamp. Listen, oh my God, I definitely got to play some of his video and critique it one day, just so y'all can hear this crap this dude was saying. It's so pathetic that he's putting out this factual lies on us. We're definitely gonna get a lawsuit against this idiot real soon. Okay, I'm stating that for a fact. Okay. Georgia opposes the federal policy. The treaty with the Cherokees, North Carolina opposes the treaty. Now remember, we spoke about this. The Cherokees. I'm sorry, I said the treaty. The treaty with the Cherokees. We read about this in the book, and it's told us that eventually the Cherokees folded. You know, they ended up going with them, and this is why the Choctaws had to, or the Creeks had to go against them because they had no choice. They were overwhelmed and overpowered, so on and so forth. So the treaties with the Choctaws and the Chickasaws. This is what we read before, guys. Remember, Georgia attempts to secure more land from the Creeks. The state of Franklin makes unlawful seizures of Cherokee land. The James White, the newly elected federal superintendent of the Indian Affairs, tried to mediate between Georgia and the Creeks. The Secretary Knox report of a plan for military action. Knox report as a dispute between North Carolina, Georgia, and the Indians. The report of Congressional Committee on the Federal and State Relations. Georgia is unable to carry out particularistic policy. The congressional proposal for dealing with the Southern Indians. Georgia hopes to secure for herself Indian successions already made. So this is probably where he's getting this from, where he's thinking that it had nothing to do with them, but they were intruded upon, and they were still the Choctaws, I believe. Congressional resolution for the protection of the Indian lands. North Carolina, in opposition to the federal Indian policy, is also unable to give proper financial support for federal negotiations with the tribes. Failure of the Cherokee and the Creek nations. 5. Toward an Indian policy. The first statement of the policy of the federal control. Early tendencies toward decentralization of control of in the Indian affairs. The management of the Indian affairs became a function of the War Department. The Indian affairs in the Articles of Confederation, the Spanish and the English attempts to establish a monopoly over the English trade. Congress, unable to supply, presents goods in sufficient quantities to keep the tribes friendly. The problem of control of the Indian trade is discussed in the Continental Congress, the Plan of 1786, final failure of government-controlled trade. The trade carried on by private interests in the North and the South, financing the Indian Department. Education of Indian youth at government expense, a war measure. The plan of a Countess of Huntington for the civilization of the Indians, and the conclusions. So that was the information that they had on that. The collapse of the imperial control. So the Indian problem was not new. For years, it had concerned the statesmen of England, France, and Spain. as well as the colonial leaders. The tribes were in possession of valuable land. I'm gonna let that ponder for a second, which we already know what it's about, right? The tribes, hear the jealousy, the tribes were in possession of valuable land. Their trade was the cause of much rivalry. Just being trading with these people and sharing with them caused jealousy and rivalry. And their warlike abilities made them more formidable. So they were afraid to get into war with them, but they knew they wanted to steal and take over our land. Before taking up the main thread of the story, it will be necessary to give a brief review of the later stages of the British control. In this chapter, therefore, we shall give a general view of the tribes during the final period of the imperial control. It will then be necessary to see how the British machinery for the management of Indian affairs ceased to function, and also to note the early steps taken by the new government in an attempt to deal with the tribes. Micmac was one of the more important northwestern Indian tribes. We talked about this last week. Hold on one second, guys. I got to respond to something. Give me just a second. I apologize. Perfect. Sis, Grandis, sis, furious, Grandis. A couple of you guys came in. I was over there reading, guys. I'm getting into this. Y'all already know what it is. These facts. And go my sis, Grandis, sis. Curtis, Grandis to you, Grandis. House of Nathan, peace, brother, peace. Grandis to everybody. Yes. Let's get into this. Let's finish this up real quick. Make sure we get this spread. The Micmac. Remember, Doe was talking about this last week, guys, and we were reading in the other book, the one on the Indian tribes, and it was talking about the Micmac tribe. I think one of you guys, I'm not sure, it may have been Furious, could have been House of Nathan. I know someone I'm familiar with. One of you guys put something in the chat about the Micmac. It may have been House of Nathan. If it was you, bro, just remind me what you said about it. Let's go on. The Micmac was one of the more important northeastern Indian tribes. It occupied parts of Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, the Prince Edward Islands, the northern part of New Brunswick, and probably southern and western Newfoundland. This group, along with the smaller tribes of St. John's and Nova Scotia, were principal nations. They were the principal nations with whom the Continental Congress dealt. On the whole, the Indians of this region played one of the least important roles. So you guys remember we were reading about the government. They were saying like, oh, they created governance and all of this nonsense, right? And we read and showed that who the governors were, the empresses, the kings, the queens, who the Senate was, that the elders of the tribes were actually the Senate. Like we see where they got all of the government from and how they structured it. It was just so phenomenal, that particular book, right? It gave us so much insight into everything. I love it. This is why I like reading history. Sometimes people say, "Oh, the history doesn't matter." I see videos, they're just not making sense when they say history doesn't matter. Why? It shows us what went on, what's going on, so we can know where we are and where we stand. How can you stand somewhere and start the foundation if you don't even know where you just came from? Like, come on, get your mind right. The Iroquois tribes were located in central New York and northern Pennsylvania. According to an estimate of 1774, this group numbered between 10,000 and 12,000 souls. Do you guys notice how it says souls when it talks about other? let me not get into anything. We talked about that a little bit the other day, but last week when we did the information on it, but it also said in the book. Do you guys remember in the book we were specifying how it said souls? It made it. It didn't say people or the Indians or the tribes or the Aboriginal or the Indigenous. It said souls. Yeah, that part. Their location within striking distance of one of the rich grain sections of the country and artwork, one of the main routes into the West, as well as their fighting qualities, strong viral warriors. We need some of them now. All these men we got around, Lord have mercy, some of y'all, but goodness. Made these tribes as an important factor in the Northern Indian affairs. In the country north of the Ohio and east of the Mississippi were numerous tribes. Most of them were confirmed enemies of the colonists. Duh. The Delaware or the Lenape were found northwest of the Ohio River. And let me take a drink, guys. My mouth getting dry. The Delaware or Lenape were found northwest of the Ohio River. In the valley of the Muskingum and along upper streams of eastern Ohio. Their lands joined those of the Senecas up in New York. The Senecas are in New York. That's where I'm from. That's a big thing they have. They actually have. I've been to the Seneca Reservation in New York, the largest and most western of the Six Nations. About the year 1770, the Delawares had received permission from the Miamis and the Piankeshaws to settle the territory between the Ohio and the White Rivers in what is now the state of Indiana. I'm going to read that part again. About the year 1770, the Delawares had received permission from the Miamis and the Piankeshaws to settle the territory between the Ohio and the White Rivers in what is now the state of Indiana. The Shawanees lived in the valley of the Skiato and on the Pickaway Plains. They were to play an active part in the Revolutionary War, doing much damage in Kentucky, and upon them the organized vengeance of the Kentucky frontiersmen was to fall most often. The Shawnees were closely united with the Delawares, and their villages were often intermixed. The Miamis and the Twites, together with their associated tribes, and the Piankeshaws and Weas occupied the Country. I'm assuming that's somewhere in Chicago, the Wabash Country, because there's actually Wabash in Chicago. In the territory northwest of the Ohio, they were destined to take a prominent part in the Indian affairs until after the War of 1812. The chief seat of the Ottawas seemed to have been near the lower end of Lake Michigan, extending along the eastern shore as far as the St. Joseph River. Some had settled in southern Wisconsin, while others had occupied territory with the Wyandots along the shore of Lake Erie, from Detroit to Beaver Creek in Pennsylvania. The Pittawatamis were a group continually moving southward and might be found anywhere from the Milwaukee River through Illinois north and east of the Sacs, Foxes, and the Kickapoos, also in southern Michigan and in Wabash regions. The Winnebagos, remember here, we were talking about this last week. One of the brothers brought it up. It may have been Zoe. The Winnebagos resided west of Lake Michigan in the region of Wisconsin Rock and the Fox Rivers. In 1788, they were spoken of as living on a small island near the eastern of the Lake Winnebago. The Wyandot, or the Huron remnant of the old Huron tribe, conquered by the Iroquois, they lived in the vicinity of Detroit and Sandusky and claimed most of the Ohio River. They also insisted upon the right of lighting the council fire at all the intertribunal councils. They were loyal supporters of the British interests. The survivors of the old Illinois group, I knew that was part of something going on near there with that Wabash. The survivor of the old Illinois groups lived around the French villages in western Illinois. The Sox and Foxes were found in western Illinois and eastern Iowa. The group of renegade Cherokees lived in the territories of Shawnees. In the same regions, but a little farther east, lived the Mingos. An outlaw group recruited from the Wyandots, the Miamis, the Iroquois, and the Delawares. Now, I don't know if they have anything to do with, if you guys remember, we read the McKinney information, all of their documents when they came over, these families, when they came and started causing havoc in the cities and things. I'm wondering if that's the wild group they're talking about. That's a whole nother story. The Black Irish that came over. The principal towns were upon the headwaters of the Savannah, Hiawassee, and the Takasaki rivers, and upon the whole course of the Little Tennessee. They were grouped into three settlements known as the lower towns, the middle or the valley towns, and the over towns. The Akata on the south bank of the, I think I'm saying it right, Akuta. I heard someone pronounce this, Ekoto, Ekota, on the south bank of the Little Tennessee was commonly considered as the capital of the nation. This tribe, whose territory lay across the path of the of the westward moving stream of population, was to clash frequently with the Americans during the period of 1774 and 1788. I'm a, I'm a Virgo. Yeah, how you know I'm a Virgo, bro? I came back to the chat, and first thing I see, bro, say, "Are you a Virgo?" How you know I'm a Virgo, bro? Put in there what you see in this Virgo this morning. Elizabeth, what's going on, sis? I just sent you a text, sis. Grand Rising, see, babe. Sis, oh yeah, let me see. This is why I got to get back to the chat. See, I'm reading. I'm bypassing things. Sis said, "Hold on now." She said, "There is a Muskegon, Michigan, spelled differently but pronounced the same way." Mm-hmm. Yep, sure is, sis. Sis said the Crank Book. Hold on. Sis said the Crank Brook Museum outside of Detroit had pictures displayed of the Winnebago Indians of Wisconsin. They were dark skinned with big frogs. Dang, sis, I wish you had a picture so you could have dropped it for me real quick and we could have played that. Yes, facts. Peace, Miss Morris. Grandest, sis. Grandest to you, all love and energy, babe. Period. You already know. Yes. Oh, that's crazy. Thanks, sis. I wish you had that picture. That would have been popping. We could have just dropped that right quick. We got to keep pictures, y'all. We have to take pictures when we go to these places because a lot of that stuff they'll be taken down and tearing down. I'm mad that before I moved out of New York, I'm gonna be going back there though, probably this summer to visit. But when I moved out of New York, there's so many places. Tanya actually, me and her are gonna meet up and we're gonna get some good pictures of some different scenes and stuff. I'll be able to show you guys once I go there and visit. Go back home. So this is like important, guys. We need to keep pictures, documents, so we'll have this stuff, right? Okay. It says that the Creek occupied the greater portion of Alabama and Georgia. This is for you, Mr. PMF. The Creeks occupied the greater portion of Alabama and Georgia, Mr. PMF, Mr. Dislocated in the brain. Their chief places of residence were in Cosa and Talapasa, Flint and Chattahoochee rivers. They claimed territory on the east from the Savannah to the St. Johns River and all the islands thence to Appalachia Bay, and thenceforward northward to the mountains. The Chickasaw, a tribe noted for its bravery, whose chief trading places was near the present site of the city of Memphis. They claimed the territory north of the junction of the Tennessee and the Ohio rivers, as well as the north of the Tennessee to divide between the Cumberland and Duck rivers, and north of the line running from the Chickasaw Old Field to the Mississippi River. The Choctaws occupy central and southern Mississippi. They have been characterized as preeminently agricultural people among the southern Indians. The Choctaws have been characterized as the prominently agricultural people among the southern Indians. Did you get that? The Seminoles were a tribe in Florida. Made up of immigrants from the lower Creek towns of the Chattahoochee. So the Seminoles were a tribe in Florida, and they came up from the lower Creek towns in the Chattahoochee. So they considered them immigrants because they came from a lower Creek or a different area, even amongst the Indians. A general survey shows that it was often very difficult to determine tribal divisions and their territories. Groups were constantly splitting up, absorbing others, being absorbed, or changing their abodes. We was just moving all over the place, doing what we were just, let's go find another place. Oh, we'll just take this land and let's just all combine. That's what was going on. So all the tribes started combining. There were no too much separation at that time, obviously. There were also numerous sub-tribes and renegade bands who acted either independently or in conjunction with other tribes. During most of the colonial period, the Indian affairs had been in the hands of individual colonies. Several of them, notably Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina, had been fairly successful in their dealings with the tribes. And you guys know this. We read this, that it stated that um, there were the two large tribes, and with those two large tribes, wow. Okay. All right, bro. All right. I hear you. I hear you. Since they're trying to take a picture of the museum. Oh, you can't take pictures in the museum? Wait a minute. I don't know in New York. I don't remember that, but ooh, that's kind of crazy, sis. Wow. Thanks. All right, let's get to it. Let's get to it. Let's get to it. This getting juicy. This getting juicy. Let me wipe my lips. The collapse of imperial control. So, no unified policy for the management of trade and land purchase had been evolved. Now, I got to tell you something. I've been holding this. I got an interview coming up, right? And I'm going to prove to you, y'all, everything I keep telling. I tell you, listen, when I tell y'all my spirit lead me somewhere and tell me something and show me something, and then it always be confirmed. I keep telling y'all stuff. I mean, I'm not trying to act like I'm so much more special than anybody else, but I'm definitely in tune. I'm in tune with the ether. I'm in tune with myself. I'm in tune with my ancestors' energy. I'm in tune with the binary coding that enlocks within me because I'm consistently trying to enlighten myself and others, therefore being the Tirthankara of information to make sure that others have portals bust down, broken, and removed. They're not continuously walking through a maze, so on and so forth. So in doing that, when I open myself to that and I have that open spirit and that heart of energy that is pure and true love, what happens is it gravitates to you. Everything's going to gravitate to you. I keep telling you guys, you have to be able to manifest the things to you based off your action. Whatever you're putting out to the ether is going to come back to you, even if it's negativity. If you're putting out the negativity, it's going to come back. I've done some negativity. People have, I've let, I'm not going to say people have let, people have done. I've allowed people to upset me and taken myself outside myself, negative energy I put out. So yes, I received some of that back. It was expected. You know what I'm saying? These things happen. But what I've been trying to do is make sure I'm staying balanced. And that way I am able to consistently bring you guys the proper information. As you see, everything is falling into line. Every time we turn around, there's more information. There's a confirmation of something else that we saw or read. Someone else will come and bring some type of proof or show us something that is totally different, but all in the same sense. This is how we're supposed to build. You have to have a different magnitude of things in order to make a proper build of something in order to grow into a sufficient manner. So this is what's going on. So let's get back to this. Oh, I wanted to check on my chat. Georgia Peach, peace, sis. Grandis, babe. See you done came in here. Grandis, much love. Yes, sis, they did. They did. Peace in my chat. All the people that are awesome and great and everything. Y'all the pure light, y'all the energy. Y'all already know. So, the collapse of the imperial control. There was no unified policy for the management of trade, and the land purchase had been evolved. The dangerous situation at the beginning of the French and the Indian War, when many of the tribes joined with the French, necessitated prompt the unified action through the influence of Thomas Pownall, who had been an unofficial observer at the Albany Congress. Sir William Johnson received his warrant of appointment as superintendent of the Indian Affairs from the commander-in-chief, Major General Braddock, on April the 15th, 1755. Johnson was well qualified for this position. Because of his experience as an Indian agent and trader, this appointment was ratified by the Crown in 1756. At about the same time, Edmund Atkin, oh, my ear just unclogged while I was talking. It's crazy. One of my ears did. At about the same time, Edmund Atkin had appointed superintendent of the Southern Department. The division into two departments. One was probably made to correspond to the military divisions because the problem of defense and Indian affairs were closely allied. The commission of the Indian superintendents were renewed up to the Revolutionary War, and in each case, they were issued by the commander in chief. Although Johnson had difficulties with General Shirley and Amherst, he agreed very well with Gage. John Stuart, who had succeeded Atkin in 1762, had to be told very bluntly by Shelburne that Indian affairs, as managed by the superintendent, must ultimately be under the direction of the commander. This is what they said. What the hell are they talking about? Okay, these are some other references. We don't get into all that. The Federal Indian Relations of 1774 to 1788, the Indian Department, especially in the North, rendered valuable assistance to the British armies during the French and Indian War. The loyalty of the Six Nations was retained, and these tribes furnished the warriors at Niagara in New York, Ticonderoga, and Montreal. Sir William Johnson had demonstrated that with proper leadership and cruelty of the Indians could be restrained, and that they were able to render valuable aid as auxiliaries. At the end of the war, the British government found itself rather heavily in debt, and it was decided that one method of saving was by discontinuing the policy of furnishing presents to the Indians. At the same time, French traders among the tribes were urging the Indians to rise against the English, which they should have did. They were so stupid, deceiving them with promises of military assistance from France. We read that. In case such an uprising took place, the English traders made themselves obnoxious to the Indians by cheating them in trade, obviously, by selling rum illegally and by defrauding them of their lands. Let's read that again. The English traders made themselves obnoxious to the Indians by cheating them in trade, by selling them rum illegally, and by defrauding them of their lands. Thus, the continuation of the encroachments of the Indian lands, the tricks of the traders, these tricks, the policy of economy on the part of the English government, and the intrigues of the French traders led to Pontiac's conspiracy, which in turn hastened the formation of an imperial Indian policy. After preliminaries and the proclamation of 1763, dated on October the 7th, was hastily sent to America to help quiet the Indian allies. By this proclamation, the Indian reservation, probably only temporary, in the intent of the ministry, was created between the southern boundary of Quebec and the watershed of the Appalachian Mountains. You see Quebec. What did it say? Did it say Quebec? Did it say Quebec? Okay. I keep trying to tell y'all all this stuff together. More trickery and foolery, binding of the mind, spell binding, lies, tricks, and all of that stuff, which we know. Yeah, it's a lot of nonsense. Yeah. All right, guys, give me 1 second here. All right, guys. Appreciate you guys holding on for me. Let's get back to it. Let's get back to it. Let's get back to it. I love when it starts getting juicy. All right, guys. Now, the collapse of the imperial control. All right. The Appalachian Mountains. We did the, if you haven't had a chance, make sure you go back and look at that video on the, what was the title of that actual video? Let me double check for you guys. Man, trying to handle all type of business. Oh, sis sent me a, I know that's right, sis. Period. I'm sorry, guys. Sometimes I have to handle stuff. I can sometimes, All right, all right. I have to get to that. Okay. I don't recall the actual video that I was going to look, but then I had to respond to a text real quick. I want to hold you guys up, but go back. You guys, we did the video on the Appalachians and what was going on, how the Spanish came in, the Mulligan tribe, how these people came from there. We know that President Lincoln was one of these people. We know that, what's his name? The Ford guy was one of his family, so on and so forth. Like there's so many of them. I'm bad with names, guys. I'm sorry, but this is why I do the videos, bring you guys the information best I could. I can't remember off the top of my head. I can just kind of get the facts. So if you guys go back, you can look at that video on the Mulligans, Indians, and it gives all the information about what happened with the Appalachians, how they came and intruded and mixed with that tribe. Okay. So the Appalachian Mountains, the northern boundary of the two Floridas, there were two Floridas, the northern boundary of the two Floridas and the Mississippi River. No governor or commander in chief was to make any land grants beyond the limits of the designated colonies. So anything that was made beyond the limits of the designated colonies, we know was illegal. That's like, period. Like this is from the early 1700s. So we know that's been illegal. So anything right now, any documentations, land, so on and so forth, this is the same thing that's going on now. They have no ruling or control over any of that. No one has the right to tell you, oh, I can rent this real estate to you. Oh, you can buy this property about it. How can I buy something from you that you don't fucking own? Like, come on with this. I'm getting tired of these people playing with us. Okay, within the Indian Territory, trade was to be free to all who would take out a license from the governor or commander and give security for obedience to the future regulations. Did you hear that? Within the Indian Territory, trade was to be free to all within the territory trade, which was the land that they were not supposed to build on. They had no rights to, right? Okay, was to be free to all who would take out a license from the governor and commander and give security for obedience to future regulations. And finally, the military officers were empowered to arrest those fleeing to these reservations who were charged with crimes. So a lot of the criminals were trying to go to the reservations thinking they could hide out, mix and mingle, get up in there, but they weren't supposed to be doing that. As had already been pointed out, the military office was an important center, the clearinghouse for colonial affairs. Under this system, the Indian superintendents were subordinate to the commander in chief. It would therefore be very natural for the two superintendents to favor policy which would make them more independent of the military. The plan put forth in 1764 for the control of the Indian affairs would have met the demands of the Indian superintendents. However, it was energetically opposed. However, it was energetically opposed by the traders in the colonies. The proposal provided for a complete regulation of trade and land sales, as well as for the repeal of all providential laws concerning Indian affairs. All traders in the Indian country were to be under the control of the superintendent or his agents. Civil cases could be tried by the Indian officers as they could commit for trial in all criminal cases. So they would hold the trial for them. It was estimated that the cost of carrying out such a policy would be $20,000 per annum. And the proposal was to raise the amount by a tax upon the fur trade. The tax upon the fur trade. If you guys remember, about a month ago, we read the information and documents showing about the fur trade over in Wisconsin and how they came because they wanted to take over, as they did. Which tax might be collected either at the exportation of the skins and furs, beaver skins were accepted, or paid by the traders at the post and the places of trade. That method to be adopted, which would be at least burdensome to the trade. The plan of 1764 never received the sanction of Parliament, but in both the North and in the South, the Indian superintendents preferred to act accordingly to its proposals. So, what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about that before I keep reading on? What are you guys thinking about that? I mean, it's like, confirmation. All the treachery, the land. Every time you turn around, he's talking about them taking over, stealing the lands, this, and that. What time is it? I'm sorry, guys. Let me check. Okay, yeah, we almost on the hour, guys. We're gonna end this, and I'm gonna read a little bit more of this page, and we will be done. The Indians, okay, however, there were many objections to doing this. The expense of maintaining the Indian Department on this basis was a cause for opposition on the part of the ministry. Virginia refused to cooperate with the Indian affairs. I'm sorry, with the Indian officials. The Canadian merchants opposed the system of trading posts because they were equipped to trade, as the French had done in the tribes. So the Canadian merchants, they came in to trade as well. The principal justification for their centralized system was that it would increase the English fur trade, but this did not prove to be the case. On the contrary, there was a steady decline. In 1767, Lord Shelburne, the Secretary of State in whose department lay colonial affairs, who sensed the force of westward expansion and who saw that the government was unable to finance such an Indian policy, recommended the abolition of imperial control of Indian affairs and suggested that this was a field of colonial regulation. He also recommended the establishment of Western colonies far beyond the proposal of Indian boundaries at Detroit and in the Illinois country. They urged by Benjamin Franklin, who reinforced his arguments with the letters from George Croghan, Sir William Johnson's Indian nephew, and Joseph Galloway of Philadelphia. Shelburne added to his recommendations one of the establishments of the definite Indian boundary lines. Virginia started a trading company in the spring of 1765 to carry on trade with the Cherokees. This act was disallowed by the Privy Council in 1766 because of the monopolistic character of the company. W. Henning, the statutes at large, being a collection of the laws of Virginia in 1619 through 1794, the eighth chapter, 114th, I believe, hereafter referred to as Henning Statutes, the Acts of Privy Council, Colonial Series 5 on 36. C.E. Carter, the British in Illinois country in 1763 to 74. 64, the beaver skins exported from America. In 1764, there was quite a bit. 28,000 in 1765, 27,800, 1766, 24,000. 1767, 20,000, 1768, 18,000 in the 18s. The public record offered the customs accounts 20, 37, something, whatever this is, the time period. At the same time, from 500 to 1,000 packs of peltries were sent from the Illinois country to the New Orleans annually. I think we're going to leave this right here for the moment, guys. We may come back to this a little later. I have a video I'm doing today. I haven't put it together quite yet, but I definitely want to do it today on these freaking pathogens and freaking certain things. Yep, the same story that they be telling us, says you ain't lying. So yeah, let's see. Actually, let me see. Do I want to read a bit more, at least down when they start negotiating with the tribes? I could read that. The Board of Trade did not accept Shelburne's recommendation for the abolition of the Indian Department. They were willing that the control of the Indian trade should go back into the hands of the colonies, but they were not willing that the office of Indian superintendent should be abolished, for they felt that matters such as land purchase and negotiation for boundaries, making of treaties and settlement of disputes, and holding of regular conferences should be in the hands of the imperial office officials. The idea of Western colonies was opposed as being inconsistent with the recommendations for an Indian boundary line, and thus liable to defeat the very purpose of such a boundary. The policy of westward expansion was to be a gradual one under the imperial control. The ministry accepted the proposal for an Indian boundary and authorized it to be drawn. It also ordered the transfer regulation of Indian trade to the colonies and the retention of the office of the Indian superintendent. Under the new plan, the estimated cost of the Indian Department was reduced from $20,000 to $8,000 per annum. This was the first definite policy the British government had adopted with regard to Indian affairs since the proclamation of 1763. By By it, there was to be no encroachment of the Indian lands because, and this was in 1773, they said there's no encroachment of the Indian lands because of the establishment of the definite boundary lines and the maintenance of the boundary and the control of the fur trade were to be in colonial hands. Why this control should be returned to the colonies after they had failed to signally was justified by the rather specious arguments with the colonies, aware of their early mistakes, would not make them again. I doubt it. The Indian superintendents proceeded to negotiate with the various tribes for the establishment and survey of the definite boundary between the territory of the whites and the natives. Even before the plan for an official boundary had been decided upon, Stewart had agreed upon a line to be drawn between Georgia and the Southern Indians by 1767. This line had been extended back of all the colonies except Virginia. The Virginia boundary was settled at the Treaty of Hard Labor on October the 14th, 1768. On February the 25th in 1773, Stewart submitted a map of the line drawn between the territories of the various colonies and the Indians in the Southern District. We're going to leave this right here, guys, and we will get back to this definitely another time. I definitely want to make sure that I get this information to you guys. I know. Uh, Take care. No, I'm about to end. Since actually, I'm gonna come back with this another day. I'll just do continuation of federal Indian relations, and I'm gonna leave it here so that I know where we ended it at. I see. That this is just more confirmation. I mean, what can I say? Y'all know because if y'all been right here with me, reading along with it, y'all been seeing the facts. It keeps confirming the same freaking things. All it does is break down more and more what happened. We might read something, then we'll go somewhere else and read something else, and it's showing us more and more of how they did things, how the treaties were broke. We're getting into all that now, so we'll continue this definitely on another bill. I wanted to make sure that we did get to the Indian Act information. We did go over the Christian domination and so on and so forth, which was I felt very pertinent for you guys to see. And yeah, I'm going to end that there. Peace, blessings, love, and all, guys. All right, I'm out. Till later.